Do you know that some of history's biggest rock stars almost ruined their careers with their own hands? Yes, you actually heard that right. They did something serious and fans all over the world had to punish them for it. You may have heard the rumors, but now let's get to what really happened. Here are 10 most controversial moments in rock history that sparked debates and nearly destroyed the legends behind them. Number 1. John Lennon's "Bigger Than Jesus" statement. In March of 1966, a quiet storm was brewing, one that would soon explode into flames, both metaphorically and quite literally. John Lennon, sitting down for what seemed like an ordinary interview with the London Evening Standard, made a remark that would ripple across the globe. "We're more popular than Jesus now," he said, half in jest and half in critique of society's shifting priorities. In the UK, it stirred a few headlines, raised a few brows, but that was it. Then, the quote crossed the Atlantic. And in America? All hell broke loose. Radio stations in the South pulled Beatles songs off the airwaves. Churches condemned the band from their pulpits. And fans, some of them lifelong devotees, gathered their Beatles records, posters, and memorabilia into massive piles, and set them on fire. The record burnings became spectacles. Crowds chanted, news cameras rolled, and smoke filled the air, not just from vinyl but from outrage. Have you ever seen a fandom turn on its idols in real time? That's exactly what happened. The Ku Klux Klan even got involved, staging protests outside concerts, burning Beatles records with crosses, turning what was originally a philosophical musing into a full-blown culture war. Some cities threatened to cancel Beatles performances altogether. Death threats came in. Security around Lennon tightened. And yet, the Beatles still took the stage. Still played their music. But the joy, the sparkle of their US tours, began to fade after that summer. In fact, that year, 1966, marked the last time the Beatles would ever tour live. Do you think John meant to spark a global firestorm? Or was it a case of words being pulled out of context and weaponized? Controversy aside, one thing was clear: rock music wasn't just entertainment anymore. It was politics, religion, identity. And John Lennon had just lit the match. Number 2. David Bowie declares he's gay. It was January 1972 when David Bowie, draped in a patchwork jacket and glittering with charisma, sat down for an interview with Melody Maker and casually dropped a cultural bombshell. "I'm gay," he said, "and always have been, even when I was David Jones." Just like that, with a few words, he shattered the boundaries of what it meant to be a rock star, and challenged the very identity of masculinity in music. At the time, the world was still steeped in conservatism. Homosexuality had only just been decriminalized in England 5 years earlier. In America, it was still illegal in many states. And in rock and roll, there was a rigid mold: straight, macho, untouchable. David Bowie didn't just break that mold. He flamboyantly smashed it with platform boots. But was he really coming out? Or was he deliberately playing with the press? The truth was more complex. Bowie was a master of reinvention, part performer, part provocateur. His Ziggy Stardust persona was alien, androgynous, untamed. Fans didn't just listen to Bowie, they watched him, studied him. And now, they questioned everything they thought they knew. The declaration sent shockwaves through the industry. Some embraced it. Others recoiled. Conservative critics labeled him dangerous. Record stores hesitated. Promoters panicked. But his fans? Many of them felt seen for the very first time. Can you imagine being a teenager in 1972, confused, closeted, unsure, and seeing a rock god stand tall and say those words with pride? Bowie didn't just challenge norms. He gave permission to be different, to be bold, to be unapologetically yourself. His statement wasn't just about sexuality. It was about defiance, identity. And while he would later walk back the specifics of that declaration, calling himself more bisexual than gay and even claiming he was always a closet heterosexual, the impact was already etched in history. Bowie turned controversy into courage. And in doing so, he didn't just redefine rock, he redefined freedom. Number 3. Ozzy Osbourne bites a bat on stage. It was January 20th, 1982. Ozzy Osbourne stood under the harsh lights of the Veterans Memorial Auditorium in Des Moines, Iowa, shirtless, sweating, and absolutely electric. The crowd roared. The Prince of Darkness was in his element. Then, something flew through the air. At first glance, it looked like a toy. Some weird stage prop maybe. A bat, stiff, lifeless, flapping awkwardly onto the stage. Ozzy, never one to miss a theatrical moment, picked it up. And then, he bit it down. Not a nibble. Not the pretend chomp. A full-on bite, right through the neck. The crowd shrieked. Some cheered, others froze. Ozzy stood still for a second, then dropped the bat and looked around. Moments later, he was rushed backstage and straight to the hospital, for rabies shots. But here's the twist. To this day people still ask, was the bat real? Was it a prank? Or was this just another layer in the mythology of one of rock's most outrageous frontmen? Turns out, it was very real. A teenage fan had thrown it on stage, thinking it was already dead. According to him, he thought it would add to the horror show. What he didn't expect was Ozzy actually biting it. Neither did Ozzy. In his autobiography, he claimed he thought it was rubber, until he felt it twitch in his mouth. Can you imagine being in that audience? Watching a moment that would become one of the most infamous stunts in rock history, unrehearsed, unplanned, completely unhinged? The media pounced. News outlets called him demonic, dangerous, out of control. Animal rights groups exploded in outrage. Parents everywhere were horrified. And for Ozzy? It only fueled the legend. It wasn't his first brush with controversy, and it definitely wouldn't be his last. But the bat incident became a defining symbol of shock rock, raw, chaotic, unpredictable. Was it grotesque? Absolutely. Was it unforgettable? Without question. And to this day, that one split-second decision, made in a haze of music and madness, remains burned into the lore of rock forever. Number 4, The Rolling Stones and the Altamont Free Concert. December 6, 1969. What was meant to be a triumphant climax to the summer of love turned into one of rock's darkest days. The Rolling Stones had organized a free concert at Altamont Speedway in Northern California, a West Coast answer to Woodstock, meant to celebrate peace, music, and community. But by nightfall, that dream had shattered. An estimated 300,000 people showed up. There were no proper barricades, no rail security, and the atmosphere, already tense, started to unravel almost immediately. The Rolling Stones had made a fateful decision to hire the Hells Angels as security. Paid in $500 worth of beer, the motorcycle gang was tasked with keeping the stage clear. But their methods? Brutal. Armed with pool cues, chains, and steel-toe boots, the Angels didn't de-escalate tension, they escalated it. As the day wore on, violence erupted throughout the crowd. Fights broke out. People were injured. Jefferson Airplane's lead singer, Marty Balin, was punched unconscious mid-performance. Grateful Dead, sensing the growing chaos, pulled out entirely and refused to play. But the worst was yet to come. That night, as the Stones performed Under My Thumb, an 18-year-old fan named Meredith Hunter tried to get closer to the stage. High on methamphetamine and visibly carrying a revolver, he was confronted by Hells Angels who didn't hesitate. They stabbed him. Multiple times. On camera, Meredith Hunter died just feet away from the stage. And incredibly, the show went on. Captured in the haunting documentary Gimme Shelter, the footage of that night remains chilling. The music, the confusion, the screams, it's all there. The band didn't know what had happened until hours later. What was supposed to be a celebration became a symbol of something else entirely. The end of the 60s. The end of innocence. A raw reminder that even the most well-meaning movements can spiral into tragedy. Do you think Altamont was just poor planning? Or was it a reflection of something deeper? How peace and chaos often walk side by side. The Rolling Stones were forever marked by that night. They didn't stop touring, but they never tried anything like Altamont again. Some moments in rock history are legendary. Others are cautionary tales. Number 5, Marilyn Manson blamed for Columbine, 1999. April 20, 1999. Two teenagers walked into Columbine High School with guns and homemade explosives, leaving 13 people dead and the world in shock. It was one of the deadliest school shootings in American history, and it sent the country into a frantic search for answers. Why did it happen? Who, or what, was to blame? And almost overnight, one name became the media's favorite target: Marilyn Manson. With his pale face, jet black hair, and controversial lyrics, Manson had already been painted as rock's ultimate villain by parents' groups and conservative politicians. So when reporters discovered that the Columbine shooters might have listened to his music, they ran with it. But here's the truth: they didn't. Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold weren't Marilyn Manson fans at all. Still, it didn't matter. News anchors demonized him. Headlines screamed accusations. Politicians like Senator Joe Lieberman pointed fingers. Manson was forced to cancel tour dates. Protesters showed up at his shows with picket signs. He even received death threats. Imagine being blamed for a national tragedy, something you had absolutely no part in, just because of how you looked or the art you made. Manson stayed silent at first. But when he finally spoke, it wasn't with fury, it was with thoughtfulness. In an interview for Bowling for Columbine, he was asked what he would have said to the people of Littleton if he'd been given the chance. His answer? "I wouldn't say a single word. I would listen to what they have to say." And that's what no one did. That moment changed everything. Many who had once viewed him as a monster saw something different, someone human, someone reflective, someone misunderstood. And slowly, the tide began to turn. Critics realized the real issue wasn't music, it was the culture of blame, fear, and media hysteria. Manson's career survived, but the scars of that moment never quite faded. Why is it that we so often look to artists as scapegoats during times of tragedy? In the chaos following Columbine, Marilyn Manson became a cautionary symbol of what happens when fear replaces facts and headlines outrun the truth. Number 6, Sinead O'Connor rips the Pope photo on SNL. It was October 3, 1992. Sinead O'Connor stood alone under the bright lights of Saturday Night Live, just her and a microphone. She had just finished performing an a cappella version of Bob Marley's War. But instead of ending with applause, she did something that would ignite a firestorm. She held up a photograph of Pope John Paul II and tore it in half. "This is the real enemy," she said softly, and then dropped the pieces to the ground. No warning. No explanation. No going back. For a few moments, there was silence. The studio audience didn't applaud. They didn't boo. They didn't know what to do. And millions of viewers watching at home were shocked, outraged, and confused. But Sinead knew exactly what she was doing. She wasn't trying to provoke for attention. She was protesting the Catholic Church's long-hidden record of child abuse, years before it was widely acknowledged. Sinead had grown up in deeply Catholic Ireland and had experienced abuse herself. This was her moment to expose a truth she felt no one else was willing to face. But the world wasn't ready. NBC was flooded with complaints. The next week, when Joe Pesci hosted SNL, he held up the taped-together photo and slammed her for it. Radios blacklisted her. Venues canceled concerts. CDs were crushed in public demonstrations. Her rising career, just 2 years after Nothing Compares to You had taken the world by storm, was suddenly in free fall. Why do we silence artists who try to tell uncomfortable truths? In hindsight, many came to see her act as prophetic. As more victims came forward and the church's scandals were exposed, public opinion slowly shifted. People began to understand what Sinead had tried to say in that one defiant moment. But by then, the damage was done. She didn't apologize. Not once. She never backed down. Years later, when asked if she regretted it, she replied, "Hell no." Because for her, that protest wasn't about fame, it was about justice. And that night on live television, even as the world turned its back, Sinead O'Connor became something more than a pop star. She became a symbol. Next is Madonna's Like a Prayer scandal. In 1989, Madonna was already the queen of pop. But nothing she had done up to that point, not the lace gloves, not the risque performances, not even Like a Virgin, could prepare the world for the chaos she was about to unleash. It all started with a commercial. Pepsi had just signed a $5 million deal with Madonna, one of the most lucrative sponsorships in music history. The plan? She'd debut her new song, Like a Prayer, in a family-friendly TV ad during The Cosby Show. No controversy, just a nostalgic montage of Madonna dancing and sipping soda. Then came the music video. And everything changed. The video opened with a black man being falsely accused of a crime, a burning cross, and Madonna dancing in front of religious imagery, in lingerie. She kissed a saint, cried in a church, and blended gospel, race, and sexuality in a way mainstream pop had never dared to attempt. The Vatican was outraged. Religious groups around the world called it blasphemous. Crosses burning on screens sparked instant comparisons to the KKK. Catholic organizations accused Madonna of mocking the church, of desecrating the sacred. And Pepsi? They panicked. Even though their commercial had nothing to do with the controversial video, they were caught in the crossfire. Protests erupted. Churches called for boycotts. So, just 2 days after the ad first aired, Pepsi pulled it from television, scrapping the entire campaign. But here's the twist: Madonna kept the money. And the controversy? It only made her bigger. Like a Prayer rocketed to #1. The video won awards. And Madonna? She stood firm, never once apologizing. Art should be controversial, she said. That's the point. Do you think the backlash would have been the same today? Or was this a moment only the 80s could have produced, when pop stars and religious institutions collided head-on? Madonna didn't just release a music video. She sparked a global conversation about faith, race, sexuality, and freedom of expression. And in doing so, she redefined what it meant to be a pop artist. Lastly, the Rage Against Machines naked protest on SNL. It was April 13, 1996. Saturday Night Live was prepping for a high-energy episode hosted by billionaire presidential candidate Steve Forbes, a man known for his conservative, pro-corporate stance. But no one expected that the night's musical guest, Rage Against the Machine, would turn it into a political flashpoint. From the start, the pairing felt strange. Rage was anti-establishment, anti-corporate, anti-everything Forbes stood for. So when the band showed up at 30 Rock, they had a message, loud and clear. Just before going on stage for their first song, they hung 2 upside-down American flags on their amplifiers. A deliberate act of protest. But NBC? They weren't having it. Producers rushed in and ripped the flags down, live, just seconds before the cameras rolled. The band was furious, blindsided. They went ahead and played Bulls on Parade, unleashing their fury through every lyric, every chord. Then chaos. Before they could even perform their second song, NBC kicked them out of the building. Rage Against the Machine was banned from ever appearing on SNL again. And in true Rage fashion, they didn't go quietly. Bassist Tim Comerford reportedly trashed the dressing room, tossing pieces of the American flag onto the SNL stage in defiance. The band had made their point. Loud, raw, and completely uncensored, even if the network tried to erase it. Was it too much for live television? Or was it exactly what the moment called for, an unfiltered, unflinching stand against hypocrisy? Rage wasn't protesting America. They were protesting power. The kind that gets a platform like SNL without being questioned. The kind that profits off rebellion while sanitizing the rebellion itself. In a world of scripted performances, their message was real and unforgettable. And that's it for this video. It's crazy how one moment or one decision can turn a rock star into a legend or a villain. If stories like these fascinate you, if you love diving into the raw, untold truths of rock history, hit that subscribe button, because this is just the beginning. There's so much more where this came from. See you in the next video.